1994.
Tonight, cracking the case when the trail has gone cold.
We're cops. We're supposed to catch the bad guys.
Meet the super sleuths of Boston's cold case squad who dust off the files on the oldest unsolved crimes.
Some files just have a pulse that cries out instinctually, I guess, that tells you that this case can be solved.
Judd Rose is there with them to see how these extraordinary cops get their man. A remarkable undersea adventure.
He will be frightened. He'll be very frightened.
John Quinones comes face to face with the creatures we love to hate.
Unbelievable. They're 6 feet away from us.
Meet the man who knows more about sharks, the fear, the mystery, the misconceptions than almost anyone else in the world. Well done! School's out. Do you know where your children are? We did an experiment.
Would you help me look for my doggie?
And learned a shocking lesson for parents.
Why didn't you run away?
Because he wanted me to find Shorty.
Chris Wallace with what every parent should know to keep a child safe.
We learn from our mistakes.
It's like watching Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Joe DiMaggio playing in the same game. Domingo, Carreras, and Pavarotti. A primetime exclusive warming up for the concert they're calling a musical miracle. Is any stage big enough for these three giants?
We are going to be on stage doing what we really like most in life, to sing.
And our parting shot.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Sylvia Chase, John Quinones, Renee Poussaint, and Nancy Collins, this is Prime Time.
Good evening. Sam is off tonight. You're about to meet a couple of unforgettable characters. They are the crusty, dogged, never-say-die detectives of the Boston Cold Case Squad. A cold case, of course, is one where the trail led nowhere. It looked as if the murderers had gotten away. These are cases nobody else wants to touch. Nobody except the unrelenting gumshoes who tell Judd Rose, in many cases, they think time is on their side.
Harvard Square is not where you'd expect a hard-boiled homicide detective to spend his time off.
Watch out.
Playing chess, no less. But being a master of this game may be why, as a cop, Tim Murray has all the right moves.
Basically, what you do in chess is you try to think what your opponent is going to do and why is he doing it. You try to reflect on the last move or past moves to see what he might do in the future. We do the same thing when it comes to murder investigations. It's an if-then philosophy. If I do this, then what will the bad guy do? If I was the bad guy, then what would I do? Hi, Tim Murray, Cold Case Squad. You got a minute?
A minute, a month, time is a relative thing for the Boston PD's Cold Case Squad. Their job is to crack old, unsolved murder cases and track down murder suspects who've been on the run for years, sometimes decades.
There's a rule of thumb among homicide cops about how long you've got to crack a case.
Yeah, if you don't solve it, well, within the first 48, 72 hours, the odds drop off dramatically that you will be able to solve it.
Detective Steve Murphy is the other half of the Cold Case Squad. He says, despite the conventional wisdom, time is often on their side.
A certain number of these cases, they get better with age, because as relationships deteriorate, people are now willing to talk about a person that they wouldn't say a word about years gone by.
The Cold Case cops started work in late 1991.
Dead victims from the 60s.
Since then, they've closed the books on 29 homicides.
Bloody footprints. That's the score.
Many all but given up on long ago. This is Homicide Headquarters, a scruffy 80-year-old building in South Boston. Murray and Murphy work in a second-floor squad room in the back. When we first met them, they were trying to find one Willie Foskey, a murder suspect who eluded the cops 27 years ago. The scene of the crime, It used to be a car repair shop, and in the back there was a regular dice game, $2 stakes. One day in 1967, Willie Foskey rolled the dice and won, but the other player refused to pay. So Foskey went out and got a shotgun and came back and demanded his $2. When the other guy dismissively threw the money on the ground, witnesses say Foskey blew him away and disappeared. Nearly 3 decades later, the chess game begins. First move, try to match Foskey's fingerprints with arrest records in states where he has family and friends. They match the prints, but in doing so find that while on the run, he's used as many as 10 aliases. Next move, use those names to search driver's licenses, employment records, anything to see if Foskey has a predictable pattern of behavior. Now, the if-then strategy. If he's already been arrested in one state, then where does the pattern suggest he'd go next?
Never been to South Carolina. Never been to Tennessee. Negative in West Virginia. Bingo.
The search zeroes in on Flint, Michigan, where they ask state police to stake out a house.
They're going to check it out. They're going to run it through the system and see where he is right now.
The end game begins. It's Foskey's move. No matter how many cases they solve, there are always more. Boston averages about 100 homicides a year. Around 60 are usually solved quickly. The other 40 end up here. And since there's no statute of limitations on murder, they stay here until they're solved. With about 1,000 cases total, how do they choose?
Well, my style, my technique is pulse. I look for a file that has a pulse in it.
But now, some of these files here, from what you told me, have virtually nothing in them. I mean, no photos in some cases, no fingerprints. So how do you get a pulse, as you put it?
There's an expression in homicide that homicide detectives speak for the dead. Well, I know it sounds corny, but sometimes dead files can speak to us. We read something and it says, this case should be solved.
Such a case was the 1990 murder of Ray Johnson. Officer Bill McNamara and his partner were in Boston's Roxbury section responding to a street disturbance when they spotted a gang of kids.
The officers are about to stop and talk to them, and all of a sudden 18 gunshots ring out. The officers draw their service weapons, order everybody to the ground, and the gunshots ring out.
Neighbors looked out and saw the cops with their guns drawn and 17-year-old Ray Johnson dead at their feet.
The next morning, get a phone call from police headquarters to come turn in my weapon. In other words, I found out later, for the first 6 days of this, we were the suspects.
They were never charged. Turned out their guns hadn't even been fired. In fact, 18 shell casings were found in a nearby alley. The shooting remained a mystery for 2 years until Tim Murray went to the scene and took a look. Knowing this was gang turf,
we started asking questions, doing a little behind-the-scenes move, and basically we were able to crack this code of silence that this particular gang had, and it held for 2 years.
It had gone down like this. Blandon Mitchell had been walking by that night and saw a chance to improve his gang status by killing some cops.
Blandon Mitchell ran to his house, got his .380 automatic weapon, came into the alley, walked to the mouth of the alley, intending to shoot the 2 Boston police officers. Blandon walked to the end of the alley, looked out, saw the police officers, stuck the gun out, stuck his head back, boom, 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 boom!
He missed and hit Ray Johnson, his own friend. Blandon Mitchell was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but in court, he showed no remorse.
Now the judge was going to pronounce sentencing. He said to Mr. Mitchell, he said to him, "Do you have anything to say before I pronounce sentencing?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He said, "I'm sorry I missed the 2 of them." Yeah, he did.
This case had what Tim Murray calls a pulse, just another way of saying he had a hunch, an instinct.
He has an uncanny ability to get in the mind of a number of these individuals whom he's never met.
Working a hunch is one of the basic skills of any good detective. But if the basics were enough, few murders would become cold cases. They would have been solved when they happened. So the cold case cops have created entirely